Welcome to Parental Awesomeness Podcast, Episode 1. My name is Maurice.
I'm Alicia.
And today we're going to touch on a few topics that just been going on lately. So let's go ahead and break those down for you here first. So the things we'll be talking about today, first off, we're going to introduce ourselves. That way you get to know the people that are behind the podcast and what we do, things like that, where our minds are. After that, we're going to talk a little bit about consent and rape culture and parenting, things like that. Then, of course, with all the police violence and stuff going on lately, we will be talking about how that affects parenting and what you can do as a parent to try to help out in your community. Alright, so we're going to start off with Alicia here. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Alicia. I am a mother of 2. I'm an early childhood education major. I work weekends as a private caregiver, and in the long run, my main goal is to write children's books that are directed at children of color, to be a little bit more inclusive and show more representation for children of color in our literature. Right now, my biggest issue is I really can't find a lot of books that can really speak to my children, as they are mixed children, and I'm just looking for ways to help out because I see how these things affect my children, and I want to be able to help other families as well.
All right, so that was a little bit about Alicia, which, of course, is my wife. That's why we're doing this podcast together. So now, me, Maurice, I'm father of 2 also. One is not technically mine, but I take care of him. I don't know why she didn't mention that to begin with, but I'll go ahead and cover that.
Sorry.
So, right now I'm a web design major. Just trying to, I love computers. That's what I love the most, video games, computers. But, I also care about our community. And I feel like the technology field is kind of underrepresented by people of color. So I kind of want to make my mark out there as well. And also speak out on a podcast like this. So in this podcast, it's a parenting podcast. Hence the name Parental Awesomeness. Thanks to Alicia here. She came up with that. I'm not original.
I'm not really either. It was really more for, I'm a really big nerd, and I spent days trying to think of a name, and I couldn't think of anything else except for the fact that we strive to be the most awesome parents ever. And if that's not what this podcast is about, then I don't know what it is about then, because there's just so many aspects of being parents that people consider work, when really it's just so awesome to be a parent. And that also includes not just moms or dads, but caregivers of children, aunts, uncles, godparents, your grandparents, if you have a close friend that you consider like extended family, parenting is so much more than just being biologically related to your children. And of course, Maurice is not biologically related to my oldest son, but he is one of the best parents I've ever met. And he took on that task so beautifully and so impressively that, it just really opened my mind to what parenting is really about. It's not just birthing and raising a kid. It's so much more complex than people think. And that's why I think being a parent is awesome. We have so much room to work with. So that's where parental awesomeness came from.
And you always have those people out there that are like, I'll never have kids. Kids suck. I don't want to waste all my money on them and things like that. But it's not bad. It's not, I don't see why people complain about it. I think the people that hate stuff like that just can't really deal with people in general, and that's probably just their problem. But they're missing out, so oh well.
I think it's totally fine if people choose not to have children, but I do think that people just don't understand that being a parent is not just all work. And hey, if you don't want to have kids, don't have them. You're under no obligation to have them. But if you do have a child in your life that you care about, doesn't have to be your own, this is still some information that can help you, because you want the people around you to flourish. So if anything here can help you, if you've got a niece, a nephew, your best friend's child, or your neighbor, you want to, kind of help them out a little bit, take some of this information with you and, live your life. Don't have kids, but if there are some in your life, do your best to do a good service to them. So, yeah.
No, forget that. Have kids. Honor your family.
Shut up.
Honor your family.
So, because Maurice is my husband and we are two totally different people, also be aware that as we speak here, there will be disagreements. We may fight after we record this. I don't know. But there's a lot of stuff that, we don't see eye to eye on. And another part of this is that you're going to hear different opinions. You're going to hear different viewpoints. And you may like what he says. You may like what I say. But I mean, also, you may even hear him learn from me and me learn from him. So consider this an outlet for you to listen to and grow from as well, because you'll be hearing that from us as well. We're not just here to school you and say this is right and this is wrong, because that's not reality. The reality is we're learning every day, and there's never going to be a day where you don't learn something new. You're not going to go out and automatically know information. This is all stuff that you gain from experience, and some of those experiences come from simple discussions like this where, like for example, Maurice and I disagreed on some classist issues, and now because we discussed it, we see more eye to eye on that. So you're also gonna grow with us. It's not just gonna be we're here to talk. We want to hear feedback from you. If you hear us kind of go back and forth about something or talk about something, I want to hear your thoughts on that. I want to hear responses. I want criticism. If I said something problematic, please say something to me. I want to know. It's not just all about, we're right and you're wrong, because that's so not what this is about. So I hope that, you'll continue to listen and understand where we're coming from, and, continue to listen and be with us through this journey.
And if you do ever want to comment or write us or anything like that, we have an email address. It's parentalawesomeness@gmail.com. You can send in stuff there. We have a Facebook page as well. I'll probably add all those links in the description and all that info. That way it's easier to get to.
And we have a Twitter as well.
Yeah, Twitter. We're on there. We also have our own separate Twitters as well. So we're easily reachable. And don't be afraid to talk to us. We don't bite. We might be a little mean sometimes, but...
Oh my God, I'm the queen of snark. I'm the queen of snark. I'm not even going to lie.
We are all just here to help each other. So feel free to reach out to us. If you have anything to say, you want us to add something to the podcast, if you want to hear our opinion on anything, just throw it out there.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, some of your responses, I would love to read them and kind of, give feedback. Like, if you have a question about something I mentioned, like, if I discuss white privilege and you want more education on that, hey, I can link you to some stuff, or maybe I'll be in a good enough mood to where I want to talk about this stuff and, give that education out. So, I mean, if you want me to read what you say, I'm more than happy to do so.
Oh, that's nice. So nice.
I know.
All right, so let's see. First thing that we do have to talk about is consent and rape culture. This stems from, of course, the horrible Stanford rape case that just happened not too long ago. So there's a few things that we do want to touch on as far as, teaching your kids the right things. I mean, there's things that you can teach your children growing up already. You may think they don't understand, but like Alicia was telling me earlier, I mean, you can't just think your kid doesn't understand it. You got to throw these concepts at them and see how they take them.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there who say, well, I don't need to teach my children about consent because they're too little to be exposed to these discussions. And that's entirely false. You don't have to give them the nitty-gritty details on what happened at Stanford, but you can teach them about consent in simple ways. One of the things that we learned about in early childhood education is that we can teach our kids any subject without even them knowing. We can teach them about gravity. We can teach them all different kinds of sciences. We can teach them algebra. I mean, kids are little sponges, and if you really understand how to approach them and how they learn, you can teach them anything. And one of the biggest things that children need is for them to be treated as individuals. You have to understand that they're tiny humans. They're not just carbon copies of ourselves. They're not just a miniature Bob. You know, they're individuals with minds and souls. And if you want them to learn how to respect other people's boundaries and how to consent and to understand what consent is, it is very, very, very simple. You know, we have an 8-year-old and a 2-year-old, and my 8-year-old knows about consent. And in the simplest terms, the way he learned was a girl took his eraser from him and he told her, I don't want you to take my eraser. And she took it anyway. And it really hurt him. I mean, I know to us, like, okay, it's an eraser, but that was his boundary, where that was his stuff. It was, you know, an extension of him, and somebody invaded that bubble. You know, they took something from him. Of course, that also goes hand in hand with stealing, but she took it out of his hand, and he did not like that. And he said, she shouldn't have done that. I didn't give her permission to. And I said, and, you know, to myself, I thought, wow, my son already understands consent. I didn't have to do anything. He learned it on his own. That was his own personal experience. And he doesn't want to do that to other people. You know, he will ask politely. I mean, he's a normal child. Sometimes he will forget. But overall, if he doesn't want you touching him, he will let you know. And if you don't want him to touch you, you say, hey, man, I just kind of want my space. And he'll respect that. And he's only 8 years old. So if an 8-year-old can understand it, I think anybody could. And this is the things that we have here to talk about are some ways that you can understand why it's important to teach your children about consent. And, you know, not just physical consent, but like, you know, I don't want you to call me, you know, Mike. My name is Michael. You know, simple things like that.
And I mean, there's also ways that we accidentally teach our kids rape culture, which, you know, it's not our intention. Nobody wants their kid to grow up to be a bad person. It's just things that are kind of ingrained in society to where, you know, you think they're normal. But, I mean, you know, it's kind of setting your child up to be, I won't necessarily say a bad person, but it's not good qualities to teach your children to have. And we also have a list of things of that nature that we'll touch on as well. So which one do you want to do first? You want to do the...
Well, I have an article here that I think would be good to start with. I found this online from Everyday Feminism, and this was written by James St. James, and it's called Consent. Your child should never be forced to hug anyone, yes, including a relative, and here are 7 reasons why. Now, I found this article through a friend, and she had somebody on there who was arguing with her about it. And he was saying, well, you know, it could be a cultural thing, and you need to, you know, encourage your child to understand. And, you know, I'm Mexican. I come from a culture where we hug and kiss each other when we meet. And when I was a child, I could not stand it. I did it because my parents wanted me to. And as I got older, I do embrace my family, where if I see them, I'm more than happy to hug them and kiss them. And I am a hugger myself. I love hugging people. But if somebody tells me they don't want to hug me, I'm not going to force that on them.
I mean, that's within your comfort zone.
Exactly. So if my child tells me I don't want to hug Uncle Manuel, well, kid, you don't have to. You know, that's your right. That's your body. And I understand that this guy on that thread, you know, was saying that we need to understand to respect cultural differences, and I totally agree. But at the same time, we're still individuals, and we do have a say over our own bodies. So, you know, it was a really tough discussion, and I just want to shout out to my friends who were on there. You know who you are. You really held it down, and I love my friends that, you know, we're all like-minded and we understood. So, but anyways, the first topic here, it says, it teaches your child that they don't have control over their bodies. Now, this is really important, because when you say you need to hug your Oma, that's our grandmother, my children's grandmother, I'm sorry. You know, my children choose to hug her, but she is also understanding that if they didn't want to hug her, they don't have to. So if you say things like this, like you have to hug your Uncle Mike because that's respect. Well, what about respecting your child? If your child says to you, you know, I don't feel comfortable hugging them, or I don't want to, they should be able to make those decisions over their own bodies. The little tag that came with it, one of the points was, This is particularly relevant for female-presenting people. In our patriarchal world of the male gaze and body policing and sexual assault, it's hugely important to teach girls, as well as everyone else, that it's never okay to be made to touch another person when you don't want to. Maurice, a male-presenting perspective?
Yeah, well, I mean, like she said, it's just all about respect. I mean, you don't only need to respect people for their views, but also their personal space and their feelings. I mean, you can't... I mean, I know I myself, I don't want just any random person touching me, you know. I don't need that. I don't care for that. If I don't want you to hug me, then people should respect that. And I mean, I think it's important that even as children growing up, that you already know that. That way, growing up later when you're on your own, I mean, there's no question to it. You're just, you know, I mean, you know that, okay, this is not something that I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm not going to do it. I'm going to respect this person's space, and that's that. I mean, to some people it's common sense, but I mean, like Alicia said, in some cultures, you know, people do that on a daily basis, and they don't really think about it in a respect form. They just think of it as, okay, you need to respect the culture. So that's the way I see it.
It's definitely an iffy line to walk, because you don't want to disrespect your friend or your family member, but you also want to be respected as well. And that's where you need to create a dialogue, maybe write a letter. But most importantly, because, you know, I'm talking about this is focusing on your children. If your child says something, you are their advocate. And if they need you to stick up for them, stick up for them. Don't just say, well, that's what, you know, Uncle Mike likes. Well, Uncle Mike also needs to understand that maybe your child doesn't really feel comfortable. And if they're really family, they really care, they're a good friend, they will understand. And if they don't, it's time to have a discussion or maybe take some space away from that person. The second point here that I have says that it implies that you or adults in general have the right to touch your child how they want, when they want. Man, that one really spoke to me. It spoke to me. I've worked with children before, and I haven't worked with them in years. I currently work with people with disabilities. But having children of my own, it's been eye-opening to understand that, you know, these are still, like I said, they're tiny little humans. They're their own people, and they need to feel respected from day one. So if you feel like you have control over your child's body, please reevaluate, please reevaluate, please reevaluate. I cannot stress that enough, because what you do is your child will be told, okay, I'm sorry. I'm just so like, this is so important that sometimes it just really cuts into my soul that I kind of lose track, but I'm back on track. I'm so sorry. Anyways, the point here has little bullets. Here's a scenario. Child is told to hug so-and-so. Child rejects. The child is guilted, shamed, belittled, manipulated, or otherwise made to feel obligated to hug whoever. The child does so, and then the child feels, you know, guilty, feels bad for being reprimanded over not wanting to hug somebody, and then still being forced to do so. And then the child will say to themselves, and this is just a way that they wrote it, and I thought it was so spot on, but also, you know, a little humor into it, a little language humor. It would behoove me in the future to stop resisting said hugging, seeing as how it doesn't work and only makes matters worse. Resisting touch equals reprimand. I dare say this is an epiphany of biblical proportions. So basically the child will say, I don't want to hug this person, but I better do it or I'm going to get in trouble. And if I keep arguing it, I'm going to get spanked or I'm going to get punished. And that's just not the way our children are supposed to feel. We're supposed to make hugging or touching a positive feeling, not a negative feeling.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, you know, it makes them feel bad when they feel like they're doing something to get in trouble all the time. Kids don't like to get in trouble. I mean, that's, you know, back when you were a kid, you know, you hated getting in trouble. I hated getting in trouble. And I know that if I knew something would get me out of trouble or keep me out of trouble, of course I'm going to do that, you know? I mean, who wants to be in trouble? So it's like, you know, you can't do that to your kids to force them. You don't have control over your kids' bodies, per se, in that way to make them feel uncomfortable. Like, I can understand things like, you know, telling your kid to take a bath because they're dirty or something like that. Like, you know, that's hygiene and stuff like that. But when it comes to their comfort and their mental health, basically, you can't really just do that to them like that because, I mean, it affects them in the future. They're going to grow up to either have low self-esteem issues or something like that, or, I mean, they might grow up to be one of those people that thinks that they can control other people's bodies. And I mean, that neither one of those is good. So.
Mm-hmm. And it says here on another bullet point, I'm just going to say these out of order because we're kind of just going along with the topics without even trying to. It disregards your child's comfort zone. If you have a comfort zone and your child has one, and if your child says no, that means don't do it. But it also tells them that relatives cannot be abusers. And that is so important to understand, that abusers come in many shapes and forms. And most of the time, I wish I had the numbers in front of me. I'll bring them up in another episode. But child predators most likely turn up to be somebody you know. And if your relative happens to be an abuser, by forcing your child to hug them, they may not even realize that they will be abused in the future. Like, if they have an incident happen, they may not know the difference. And they may not feel comfortable telling you because you forced them to hug them. So if they say, well, this happened, they might feel like they're going to still get in trouble. So.
Right, because your first thing, if your child tells you something like that, you're going to be, well, why didn't you tell me? Of course, they're going to be like, well, you got mad at me last time. So, I mean, you can't blame them for not wanting to come out on things like that if you're treating them that way.
And of course, I'm not saying that, hey, your relative is an abuser, but I'm saying that statistically, most abusers are somebody in your life already. So just, take this information, do with it what you will, but I hope that you understand that, your kids need you to advocate for them. And if they feel like they can't come to you because you're already blowing off their consent and making them do things that they don't want to do, they may not feel comfortable coming to you. So like Maurice said, why didn't you tell me? Well, why would I tell you?
Yeah.
Oh, so the next point is it risks dismantling their natural, healthy sense of stranger danger. So I'm going to read this quote because I agree with it. I'm not actually a fan of the term stranger danger, since it can accidentally imply that all strangers are bad and all non-strangers are good. But I'm going with it since it's a term I'm confident most people are familiar with. Now, I agree with this quote. I do not like the term stranger danger. There might be a time in your child's life where the only person who can help them is a stranger. So there's a really good topic out there called tricky people that I hope you guys will Google. There's good articles on it. I don't have any in front of me, so I can't touch more on it, but an example would be like, let's say, Jimmy is at the park and he needs help, and this adult tells him, well, come with me to my car and I'll drive you to my house where you can call your mom. That's a stranger. You want them to be able to go find help. But that person is doing something that if you taught them about tricky people, they will say, that is a tricky person. I'm not going to trust them. I'm going to go find another adult. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you just basically, police officers are strangers. Firemen are strangers. There's people that are supposed to be looking out for your safety that are technically strangers to you. So you can't really teach your kids that all strangers are dangerous because, let's say you're shopping at the mall and your kid gets lost, they're going to need to go find a security guard or something like that to let them know, hey, I lost my parents, You don't want them just trying to find somebody that they actually know because they may not ever find somebody they know.
Yeah, so when we're sitting here telling our children to trust your family and hug your family at whatever cost, you're kind of enforcing that without even realizing it. And it's definitely detrimental to your child's health that we understand all aspects of this so that we can, protect our children in every way possible, and understand that, you're not a bad parent for not catching on to these things. If this is all new information, it was all new information to me at one point as well. I remember being a kid and learning about stranger danger. I remember never locking eyes with an adult as a child because I was taught that if they weren't related to me, they would kidnap me, they would hurt me, they might try to snatch me up. I remember growing up with these ideologies, and as I grew older, it was definitely hard to understand who I could go to for help if I needed it. I'm really glad I have this information now to where I can talk to my kids about it. Luckily, my oldest is very receptive to information. He's very mature for his age, and we're able to talk to him about these things and him understand it. I know not everybody has a child like that, and maybe they're just not old enough, but if you start somewhere, they will slowly but surely get it over time. Mm-hmm. Let's see. So the last topic says it sends the message that hugging or physical contact in general is the only way to show affection or appreciation for another person. Like I said earlier, I come from a culture where we do hug and kiss each other as a greeting and as a goodbye. I don't feel that is the only way to show my family that I love them. I make jokes at their expense. I get them gifts. I write them letters. I will eat the food they cook for me. I will cook them food. There's
a simple I love you is good,
Yeah, my son loves to hug and kiss. He loves it. Mainly for me, because I'm his mama, and he's my baby. But there's other people he doesn't like that from, and he makes sure that he shows them that they care. For example, his grandfather, his Opa, he goes fishing with him. They don't hug, they don't cuddle, they don't do none of that. They go fishing together, they hang out together, they have matching t-shirts. They totally love each other. My parents do hug and kiss him, but they also do other stuff with each other. They go out on outings when they're in town. They call each other. My mom will send gifts every so often. We'll send them a letter. You don't have to hug and touch somebody to show them that you love them. Nope. So, you had some papers too.
Right. Yeah. We were talking about that. Now, there are also other ways that we teach our kids or enforce rape culture. And I have a article here as well. It's 6 ways that we accidentally teach our kids rape culture. So I'm going to go over a few of these here, and we'll talk about those. So the first one is telling your kids that boys will be boys. We've all heard the term, two boys get in a fight. Oh, boys will be boys, this and that. And, we shouldn't be doing that. It's just, basically you're excusing bad behavior. Like hitting each other, breaking stuff. You shouldn't really excuse stuff like that just because they're a boy. Like, boys are able to respect things as well. You can't just say, oh, boys will be boys. Everybody knows how to respect belongings and people's space. And if you just keep saying that, then your son is just going to grow up to think that, well, I'm a boy. And, boys will be boys, basically.
Yeah, not just that. Adding to that, when you say a boy will be a boy, that enforces a very strict gender role that a boy has to like, for example, sports, has to be strong, has to wear pants, has to look a certain way. It's just all negative in my personal opinion because a child can be anything they want. My son likes My Little Pony, and I don't think he should be shamed into not liking My Little Pony because he is a boy, and that is considered a girl's show or a girl's item. No. A boy can be whatever he wants.
Shout out to the bronies.
If my son wants to be a brony, then that is what he is going to be, and there should be no shame in that. And if he wants to watch My Littlest Pet Shop, if he wants to wear pink, he is totally allowed to do so because it is his choice and it's what he likes, and that's what's important. So things like boys will be boys just enforces this gender role that, quite honestly, not everybody fits into. So, like my son always says, pizza rolls, not gender roles.
And the second one, I mean, we kind of just went over that. The second one was forcing your kids to hug and kiss. So, of course, you know, we're not going to touch on that because we just had a whole discussion on that. Mm-hmm. So we're going to skip down to the third one, which is asking your kids what you did to make somebody do something. Now, of course, you know, that's obviously not good because it teaches the victim and the aggressor, I thought I had that wrong there for a second. It teaches people that, you know, somebody can force you to make a bad choice. Which, I mean, you know, you made that decision on your own. At the end of the day, I mean, yeah, there are some people that might be a little mentally unstable or something like that. But at the end of the day, no other person can force you to do the actions that you've done.
Yeah, that just sounds like a whole lot of victim blaming. Right. Like, what did you do to make them hit you?
It basically enforces the whole, like, what were you wearing the night you got raped thing and stuff like that.
Or,
like,
you know, what were you drinking? How much did you have
drunk,
to drink? Why did he hit you? What did you do to make him mad? I mean, if you can tell your cousin, who happens to be a cisgendered female, you know, that she shouldn't stay with an abuser, we can easily teach our kids from the very beginning not to be abusers. And if we start with the what did you do to make them hit you, you're just excusing the abuser right there. You're giving them a pass. Right. And that's not okay. And that is something that you can definitely teach children at an early age. Again, with, you know, why did Jimmy push you? What did you do to make Jimmy mad? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. Jimmy shouldn't have pushed, you know. He shouldn't have pushed Billy to begin with. So, I mean, we need to teach our kids how to communicate with each other. And I understand they're so small, you know. I call my 2-year-old Tinkerbell, you know. She can only feel one emotion at a time. And I know incidents are going to happen, and it's going to take a while to teach our kids these stuff. But if we're consistent, that is the key. Consistency is what is going to keep our children on the right track and from, you know, continuing down a negative path of victim blaming and, you know, contributing to rape culture.
And as an alternative that they list in this article, instead of asking your kids, well, what did you do? Or what did she do? Or what did he do to make you do that? Ask them to explain what happened, you know. Tell me what happened from the beginning to the end. Just tell me your story, you know. Mm-hmm. Don't try to place any blame on anybody else. Tell me from your perspective what happened.
It's like when our son called from his friend's house after they got in that argument. Our son spent the night at his best friend's house, and they got in an argument.
Over
the TV. And my son wanted to come home. And he said, well, I just want to go home. And his friend said, well, just go home then. So our son calls and he's like, well, so-and-so doesn't want me to stay here anymore. And I said, well, what happened? You know, why did so-and-so say that? And our son was like, well, I did say I want to go home. And I was like, okay, so you said you wanted to come. And now he said, well, you can go if you want. And you're upset about that. Okay. Well, let's just go over the basics. If you want to come home, tell me right now, I'll come get you. But if you don't really want to go home, let's try our best not to say things like that because our friends could misunderstand. And then 5 seconds later, no, I want you to stay. Okay, I'll stay. Bye, Mom. And that was the end of that. If you just ask what happened, they'll go over it and they'll tell you. And then you can explain, well, you know, so-and-so shouldn't have done this and you shouldn't have done this part. You know, accountability, if there's fault on both sides, then definitely tell your child, you know, like what their mistakes were, but definitely don't excuse any violent behavior.
Work it out.
Yeah, you know, definitely discuss all aspects and explain like so-and-so shouldn't have done that and you shouldn't have done this part either, but it doesn't mean that they had a right to do what they did, you know, just go over the basics. And I know it's confusing the way we're explaining it, but I don't want to just throw out my kids' names over this.
You had to be there.
It was one of those things where you had to be there. So, but I hope it kind of helped to explain with a little bit of an example.
All right, so number 4 is teaching kids that boys hit girls because they like them.
Oh my
as
God.
Like a flirting type thing, like, oh, that boy's hitting you because he likes you. I mean, first of all, I mean, come on, like, you can't excuse any kid hitting any other kid at all. Like, play fighting is one thing, but these kids are like hitting each other. It's crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, and I saw this meme on the internet. Well, I wouldn't say it's a meme because I personally think that memes are funny, but it was a picture on the internet where it said, you know, stop teaching our children that, you know, it means a boy likes them if they hit them. Do not start enforcing abusive behavior, because that's exactly what this is. If a boy hits a girl, you know, it's not okay. If a girl hits a boy, it's not okay. It's all abusive behavior. And if they grew up thinking that hitting each other is okay, you're going to have a victim of domestic abuse in your family. So we gotta squash that out now.
It also it just, you know, teaches your kids that their own desire for attention is more important than the feelings of that other person that they're hitting. You know, I mean, they like that person, and they, you know, that's all they care about, their feelings, and so they're gonna hit this person because they think it's okay, not taking into consideration that other person's feelings that they're doing it to.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely wouldn't excuse your well, I would hope you wouldn't excuse your brother if he punched his girlfriend or their boyfriend, so let's not excuse it in children either.
All right, so on to number 5. You should prevent slut shaming any girl or woman in front of your kids.
Yes.
Also, you know, any other way around, like, you know, don't call women slutty. Don't say, oh, that guy looks gay or stuff like that's, you know, inappropriate at all times, but especially in front of your children.
Yeah, we definitely need to teach our children that language can be hurtful. I really don't like that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. No, words are very powerful. You could dismantle a whole person's day by saying something derogatory towards them. Slut shaming I consider very derogatory. I do not want somebody to shame my daughter for, you know, what she wore, or, you know, if she kissed 2 boys. Oh no. Oh my goodness. You know, like the horror. No, that's nobody's business. And if you happen to know that business, it does not give you the right to bash somebody else. So when you're talking about your friends or your you know, your cousin or your coworker, your children, anybody, your children are hearing you, and the biggest form of learning for a child is through imitation. You'll notice it. You know, my daughter right now, she pretends to talk on the phone, or she'll fold clothes because she sees me do that. So they're imitating you because that's how they're learning. So if you are showing really bad behavior like that, slut shaming, victim shaming, you know, abusive behavior, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to copy you because you are their model. So, you know, and that goes for anybody, uncles, you know, cousins, brothers, grandparents. The children in your life are learning from you. And if they're copying you and you're doing really bad stuff like that, they're going to do it too. And if you don't want your children to grow up to be that way, definitely check yourself, because you may be doing it and not even realizing it. So definitely think about what you say before you say it, especially in front of a little one.
And then, all right, number 6 kind of backs this one up a little bit. And number 6 is reinforcing the idea that girls should be pure. The whole purity thing, you know, girls shouldn't be slutty, or, you know, the value lies within their purity, and that they haven't slept with a lot of people and stuff like that. And I mean, you know, it's at this point in time, you know, it's more the older generation that does it, for the fact that, like, religion played a huge part in society back then. It's kind of fading out now. But I wouldn't say that. I mean, it still causes a lot of issues, but people are more open now than they were back then, and more stuff is acceptable now than back then. And like it says in this statistic here, 95% of Americans have sex before marriage. So I mean, the whole purity thing kind of, I mean, it's out the window. I mean, even statistically.
Yeah, it's definitely. I personally think it's still a huge problem because, like, yesterday we watched the documentary The Hunting Ground, and there was a whole segment about fraternities who, keep track of who they sexually have, who they have sexual intercourse with. They keep track, they build up numbers, they get photographs. I mean, the rape culture in society is just so disturbing, and it starts so early. For example, we have girls who are being sent home for their clothing. Now, I understand that there are dress codes, and I respect a school's decision to have one. But at the same time, we need to look over those school dress codes and see which ones are actually there because they need to be, and which ones are there just to hold girls down and to shame them. Like, if a bra strap is being shown, it's just a bra strap. I don't understand. Like, what part of a bra strap is sexual? And, if a girl can't walk with her chest showing, I don't think a boy should be either. And I don't know many schools that allow boys to do that, but I remember in middle school, after junior high, a lot of the boys would come out of the locker room without their shirts on after phys ed. So to me, it's like, if we can't do it, neither can you. Treat us equally, and I do not ever want my daughter to come home and say that she was sent home because her clothing was a distraction to boys. No. Teach your boys to focus and not sexualize girls. I mean, I know it's going to happen, but it is not hard to, not think twice about it. And if we teach it early in our small children, it will continue to grow and, not affect our kids in the future. Oh, I just can't. I have so many feelings.
And I mean, we can't enforce it on one gender and then not do it to the other as well. It's like, if an issue comes up, I mean, you need to talk to that guy too. What was, why was he doing that? What was he thinking? Let him know it's also not appropriate if he was making any kind of comments or stuff like that. Because, I mean, that in itself is sexual harassment too. Comments and, him staring somebody down or anything like that. So.
Yeah, I remember in junior high, my class, we were allowed to wear spaghetti straps still. I don't know if they still are, but I remember that a boy would snap them and think it was funny. Now, just because my bra strap is showing doesn't mean that you can snap it. Don't touch me. And I used to get so mad, and then I would be told, well, you shouldn't have had it showing. Well, come on. You're touching me. You're invading my privacy. It's just a strap. Like, what in the world? Ugh, I can't. It's just too much.
That's like... This boy that we went to school with, he used to live here in the neighborhood. His aunt was our age, and she moved here, she went to school with us, and this boy touched her butt in school, and she broke his finger. And she ended up getting expelled for it, but the boy didn't get in trouble.
See?
And, so her parents were like, well, we're not mad at you. You defended yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying, like, I don't know. I'm not going to say that I do feel bad for him because, quite honestly, I don't. I mean, if you come for somebody like that, expect some sort of reaction, I mean, I remember when I was, how was I, 18, 19? I went to a hardcore show, and some guy touched my butt, and he had it on my butt long enough for me to grab his hand, and I turned around and punched him in the face. Now, I'm not as aggressive as I used to be, but I'm not, I mean... What did he expect? I didn't know him and he's touching my butt. No. Back up. And I do not want my son to ever be that way, and I don't want my daughter to ever have to experience that. Nope. And quite honestly, I don't know. It drives me so wild. Like, I'm grabbing my head right now. I wish you guys could see my face of frustration because I can't deal with it.
The Picard facepalm right now.
It's just too much. And I can't deal, and I just can't deal with it. I just can't.
Bottom line is, don't enforce rape culture on your kids. Just don't do it. It's not. I mean, I know it's not intentional sometimes, but just be aware of the things that you do because they might affect your future, your kids' future. And I mean, we want the best for our children. I know. I mean, I don't see anybody having kids and not wanting the best for them. So.
Yeah, and I mean, if you don't have kids, you don't plan on having kids, and there are no kids in your life, and you're listening to this, at least take this information and be a better model for yourself. You know, because this is all stuff that you could still learn at our age. You know, I'm 30 and I'm still learning, and I'm never gonna say that, you know, I knew everything at some point. No, that's a lie.
The all-knowing.
No, that is not me.
Well, I mean, you know, that's pretty much all we have on the consent. So next up we'll probably be, well, not probably, we will be talking about these police shootings and stuff like that. So we're going to take a quick break here, and we will be right back. All right, so back from break now. We're on to the second topic, which is going to be the police violence that's been going on, all the racism, how it affects our family, how it can affect your family. You know, a couple topics to touch on as far as racism, white privilege, stuff like that. And, you know, what families that are too busy raising their families and taking care of their kids can do to be active in the community and help out.
So, I'm Mexican, 100%. I did just find out that I have a little bit of French in me, and that is a result of colonization. Now, I'm still trying to trace all of my blood, but as of now, I am a brown woman with Mexican background. My son is mixed, but he is mostly Mexican, but he looks white. He is the term I use is white presenting. The difference to me with white presenting, and I know there's a lot of talk out there about the differences. Now, the way that I was taught and the way that I use, and if there's something better, you know, email me and let me know. White presenting is a person of color who looks white, and that's it. They're still a person of color. They embrace their culture. Like, for example, my son says he is Mexican. He was raised in Mexican culture. He spoke Spanish before English, and he just happens to look white. White passing would be like a person of color who happens to look white and tries to pass off as white, denies their culture, and actively tries to be, you know, more Americanized as a white person rather than their culture. Now, to touch on this right quick, because I know maybe some people in my life, I don't know, listeners out there are going to be like, well, why does it matter? It does matter to an extent, just not in the way that you might think. Now, my son benefits from white privilege even now at age 8. An example would be, and it's not really an example of how he benefits from white privilege, but more like how I don't benefit. For example, when he was a baby, I went to the mall and I had him with me, and people stopped me and said, "Oh, what a cute little baby you have. How long have you been his nanny?" I'm his mother. I birthed him. I went into labor for 8 hours with this kid, and I'm being asked how I like being his nanny. And I was like, oh, I love being his mom. Yep, I'm his mom. I birthed him. And then it goes into the, well, what's his dad? And blah, blah, blah. You know, he benefits from white privilege, and he's only 8 years old. And he already understands these concepts. You know, we explained white privilege to him, and all we said was, in this country, white people are the normal standard. That means that I am considered exotic or foreign, or what's another term that's
illegal.
Oh, we prefer undocumented. I mean, I'm not undocumented, but that's what the community prefers. But yes, I am considered an outsider. I have straight up been asked what town on the border I was born on, or how did I get here, or, you know, when did my parents hop the border, you know, things like that, simply because I'm not white. And it's typically been white people who have asked me. Now, I did have, you know, my ex-boyfriend, his family was from India, and they did ask me as well, and I mean, it bothered me, but at that point, so many people had asked me that I was just like, I was born in Texas, not on the border. Yep, born in Houston, and then I moved to California when I was 3, and I've been here ever since. Now, I'm not in California now, but that's what I said at the time. But anyway, so my 8-year-old understands the concept of white privilege, and it just means that white people benefit from certain social privileges that people of color, specifically the black community, do not get to have. Now, that means that it is a social thing, but it does affect us in other ways. For example, my brother had to change his name. Was it his name or the city he was born in? I don't remember. It was one of those two. He had to change on his applications to get a job. And there was also, well, that's what my mom said. Maybe I should ask her for confirmation on that.
Can we confirm?
But I've had friends who have told me that they've had to change their Mexican names to more English-sounding names for them to get jobs, or else they won't be considered. Or they have to try to Americanize their voices to try to hide their accents, which is probably one of the most difficult things I could imagine doing. And I hear stories from the Black community that, they're passed up for jobs based on their name. They get, told that their appearance is unprofessional, for example, their hair. And these are all things that, white people don't really go through. Now, I'm not saying that there is not a white boy out there who comes in disheveled and looks terrible and needs to go home and comb his hair. But what I'm saying is there are a lot of cultural differences that get told are not professional or not acceptable simply because they're different and they don't fit the white societal norm.
Yep.
White people do not understand this because they do not live it. And I know there's somebody out there right now clenching their fists hearing this. I don't think you're a bad person, but you benefit in ways that you will not understand because you are not on the outside of it looking in. Literally, consider it, there's a window. We see you getting stuff easier. I won't say easily, but I'll say easier. Maybe just a fraction easier. When we're both starting in the same line and you're still advancing and I'm still back here. They're still back here. That's white privilege. White privilege is the Stanford rapist getting 6 months for his rape, and that dude from Vanderbilt who is Black getting, 10 to 15 years? Mm-hmm. He's Black. Stanford dude was white, and they both a football player and a swimmer. They both came from good schools, and look at that.
Yep.
And, I explained this concept to my 8-year-old, and he understood it. And I don't have to worry about him ever having to, ask me because he gets it. He told me that he does not think it's fair that we're both Mexican and he will have different advantages that I won't, that he would rather be brown so that I don't have to suffer alone. And I told him that, I love him very much and I really appreciate the sentiment, but there's nothing wrong with the way he looks and it's not his fault. It is the way society is. It is the way this country is, and it affects us every day. And, I don't know. It just breaks my heart to see my son want to change himself because he doesn't want his mom to be, alone in this. He shouldn't have to worry about me, but he does. And he was asking because he was told that he was not Mexican because he looks white. And that alone just shows like how much education we need for our kids because, Mexico was colonized, Spain and France invaded, and we have white people in Mexico. There's a whole colony of German Mennonites in Chihuahua, and they make the best cheese, but they're Mexican. They live in Mexico. They were born in Mexico. They were raised in Mexico. They've been there for generations. They're Mexican, but yes, they're white. They're white. And it just kind of shows that people don't understand that, America is not the only country that has white people. England is not the only country that has white people. Other places got them too.
Mm-hmm.
So
they're everywhere. Taking over.
Come on now.
Taking over.
Right now, we live in the South, and our biggest fear right now, my biggest fear, I was up all night after the shootings in Baton Rouge, and where was the other one again? Minnesota. I was up all night one night just crying and crying and crying and hugging my husband because he is a Black man, and I am scared that one day he won't come home.
Yep. Just the fact that, you've got these Black men getting shot now and they're not even doing anything it's got to stop somewhere. People keep making the excuse of, well, if you comply, you won't get shot and blah, blah, blah. But these men were compliant.
Charles Kinsey was compliant. He was taking care of his patient.
He was laying on the floor with his hands in the air, not reaching for anything, and they still shot him. And when he asked them why they shot him, they even said they didn't know. So how am I supposed to have the confidence in the police force to protect me when I feel like I need to protect myself from them? And that goes for children as well. Look at Tamir Rice. Look at Trayvon Martin. Yeah, he didn't get killed by a police officer, but
the way he was treated,
he could have just as easily gotten killed by a police officer.
And not just that. The police didn't even. They believed Zimmerman. They didn't even assess the situation. They just called it a day. This poor boy's life was just brushed under the rug, and there was no justice. And that man went later on to auction off the gun that killed him. No.
Making paintings and everything, just all on eBay and shit.
No.
But it's not only men that are getting killed by the police. It's also gone down to children now. Of all races, but primarily people of color. And it's an issue. And you need to speak to your kids. You need to let them know. Regardless of what their friends say and stuff like that. Like, please just make sure that you teach your kids to be compliant. It's not getting people too far, but at the end of the day, the odds would be in your favor.
And at least I know that if, my son will definitely never have to walk out the door and worry about this, but if later on we have another child that happens to be more, dark presenting, I could, know that my child did everything that we taught them to ensure that their safety was first, I tell all my friends in the Black community to be safe when they're out there. I tell my other people of color in my life as well to be safe. I have to remind myself. I know I was pulled over here and I immediately started crying because I'm brown, I am still living in fear as well. Not as much, but there is still fear. And I was just so lucky that man I was lucky. And I immediately cried after because not everybody is as lucky as me. No man or woman should have to fear the police. Now, just to put this out there, I'm one of those people who knows that there are decent cops out there. But here's the thing. If you are a decent police officer and you are not reporting any of the abuse, you're not reporting any of the racial profiling, if you're not reporting the corruption, you are complicit. You are part of the system that is oppressing people, that is killing people, and that to me does not make you a good police officer. You may be the best father in the world, but if you are part of the system and you are not standing up for what's right, I think you are part of the problem. And I know there are people out there with officers in their family, and I know this is a dangerous job, but it's still a job. You signed up for this. You knew what was coming with this job. You knew it was a dangerous job. Your job does not define you. You get to put that uniform on and take it off. People of color don't get to take their skin off. We are like this 24/7. And it just, I don't know, this whole ordeal with Black Lives Matter versus Blue Lives Matter. Look, blue lives, they're not blue.
It's not a life. It's not
a blue. I just can't. That is an occupation. That is an occupation, and I respect the idea of that occupation. But right now, it needs to be reformed. There needs to be understanding between the community and what we want from our police force. And I don't think it's too much asking that we can, start fresh. And it will take a long time, but if people keep resisting the Black Lives Matter movement instead of trying to understand, then we're just never going to get anywhere. And
Nope.
I've already had people argue with me, delete me. I've deleted friends as well off social media. And I know people might think it's unfair of me to be so cutthroat about it, but
we don't have the time.
I don't have the time for people in my life who are actively working against shutting me down. You can tell me that you truly believe all lives matter. I believe you. But if your response to Black Lives Matter is all lives matter, then you truly don't understand. And you are not here then you're not really for all lives matter. You're not really here for everybody. You're here because black people standing up for themselves for some odd reason offends you.
Right.
I don't know. It's just, it's too much.
People just fail to realize that just because we say Black Lives Matter, that doesn't mean that we don't care about anybody else's life. It's just that at this current point in time, the black community feels like their lives don't matter more than other people's lives. I mean, there's people of other races, like Dylan Roof, for example, shot up a whole church. He got arrested. They put him in a bulletproof vest and took him to Burger King. I mean, what black man do you know that just would have murdered 9 people that would probably even still be alive at that point?
Exactly.
Like, that's what we're talking about when we say Black Lives Matter. It's not that we don't care about anybody else. We do care. Nobody deserves to die. Everybody should have a trial and should be, convicted of whatever crime that they did in front.
Right. Everybody has a right to due process.
And I mean, it's just we're not getting that, and that's what the issue is. And people fail to realize that, and they're trying to excuse it, and that's the issue right now.
And it definitely is interesting to me when, people talk about All Lives Matter and they're like, well, what about that white guy that was killed by the cops? Okay, yeah, that was terrible. That definitely shouldn't have happened. And you see on social media who is talking about that person who was killed by the police that happened to be white. Black Lives Matter is the one standing up for them. I don't see these All Lives Matter rallies. I don't see hashtags for, what was that guy's name? Gosh, I'm the worst person ever for not knowing his name.
It's too much to keep up with.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. But he was white, and he was just killed recently.
Right.
Somebody noble. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for not remembering your name right now. But I didn't write any of these topics down because I was like, I'm going to speak from the heart, and now I wish I had written them down. So I apologize for my incompetence on this first episode. But I mean, it was the Black Lives Matter movement who was speaking out for them, and I think. Recently I just got in a disagreement with a friend who unfortunately did feel the need. He had to delete me off social media, but whatever, his life, his choice. About the Black Lives Matter rallies on the freeways. And he said, that was really dangerous. And he said it was terrorism. And I said, look, friend, that is not terrorism in any way, shape, or form. I'm sorry it was an inconvenience. And I'm sure that if an ambulance had come by, that they would have done everything to direct traffic and move. I mean, of course, it would have been tricky. But have you ever, in a point in your life, have you ever lived to that point where you would literally do anything to show people that something is wrong?
Something needs to change.
Something needs to change. That you would risk your life to prove it. I mean, if you have never reached that point in your life, then you probably shouldn't be telling other people how to handle this. I mean, you don't know what they're feeling. And when I said that he needed to check his privilege a little bit, he did not like that. And I mean, I've known this guy for over 10 years, and it sucks that we're not friends now, but at the same time, I'm not willing to sacrifice my convictions and my beliefs just to pacify him and his white guilt. And if he's listening, I'm still not sorry.
So coming up to that, and this whole movement and all the protests and all that, we just want to kind of touch on some things that you as a parent, or us as well, some things we're doing, just to kind of get the word out there and help out with the activism, because of course, I mean, I've got kids and we have jobs and stuff. We can't be at all the protests. We can't travel from state to state and still provide for a family. But there are things that you can do to help out in the black community in a time of need like this.
The first thing that I would say personally would be is if you have white friends in your family that are arguing with you about this stuff, that don't understand where you're coming from, if you don't have it in you to educate, then don't.
You don't have to.
You don't have to. But if you do have it in you at all to say anything, just ask them to listen to the stories of people of color. Now, I have one from a friend of mine who I met through a parenting group. She is a blogger. Her name is Cassandra Coxon. I hope I'm pronouncing Cassandra right. I'm pretty sure I am. You know, some people do. Well, it's Cassandra with an O. So she typed up this story. So I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. It's not very long, but she is also a mother of a child who presents as white. So here we go. I wonder if it's occurred to any of my friends what could happen if my white presenting nonverbal baby and I are alone in the car and we get pulled over by one of those few bad apple police officers. Anyone? Some of you might think it's completely melodramatic for me to be worried. Most probably have no idea of the scenarios that flash through my mind anytime a police car is cruising behind me when baby and I are riding alone. For example, what if the cop accuses me of stealing a baby? What if the encounter goes south real fast? What if my baby ends up being a witness to my murder? On a related note, someone saw baby sleeping on my back at the baby wearing convention last week and actually said, paraphrasing to remove triggering words, it was cool that I was borrowing a baby to wear. Yes, this happened. I'm guessing this fear of mine hasn't occurred to many of my white friends, in parentheses it says acquaintances, because it's not something they ever have to worry about. It's not even on their radar, but it's on mine all the time. If you as a person of color have it in you at all, mentally and emotionally, to share information with any of your white friends who need some education, tell them to listen to some stories from people of color, specifically the Black community, because these are genuine fears that we have, that the Black community has, and people just don't understand what we're living, you know? So if you have some people like that in your life, I know I have some friends that I can say have learned a lot from me, and I took the time because I was silent for so long because I was very ignorant. And then when I did learn things, I didn't stand up for what was right because I was scared of being judged. I was scared of losing friends. I was scared of people telling me to be quiet and to silence myself. So I didn't say anything, but I am now, and I'm speaking up. And I have taken the time with certain people, not everybody, to educate them. And have had people who have resisted this education. But, I mean, at this point, I'm not staying silent any longer. And if somebody has an issue with it, I am more than willing to discuss, but I'm not willing to be shut down. So that's just where I stand. If you have it in you mentally, just tell them to listen first. That's the first thing they need to do.
Of course, most of them won't listen, but you know how that goes. Now, I mean, a few other things you can do as far as supporting, like she said, you know, put the info out there. You know, that's one of the main reasons we started this podcast, was to help people out. Also, I mean, if you've been paying attention to the news or social media and stuff, we've got the whole thing going on with Killer Mike, to where he wants everybody to move their money to Black-owned banks to keep the money within the Black community, which is something that I know I myself will be doing. I've already gotten in touch with One United Bank. They are a bank based out of Los Angeles, but they're Black owned, and they've got online banking. You can set up an account. You can use the online banking anywhere in the world. They've got 25,000 ATMs across the country as well, so it's pretty easy to access your money.
Yeah, I really like the representation that they have on their website too. They don't, I mean, it is a Black owned bank, but they also have, I want to say he was a Latino.
Yeah,
and they had an Asian man.
Their website definitely represents for the people of color. They've got a whole bunch of different beautiful people of color on their website. Hispanics, black folks, everything.
And I think that just is such like a powerful thing to have, because, you know, people misinterpret Black Lives Matter and supporting the Black community as where it's only Black people.
Right.
And that's not even accurate. I mean, of course there are Black only, you know,
right,
communities, and I completely respect that. I would love to be part of a Latino community, Mexican specifically. And I respect those safe spaces, but I think most people don't understand that we just want, you know, unity among our cultures, to where we can stop cultural appropriation and really truly appreciate each other. And I think that the bank that you're talking about is one of the representation there, and the unity on there is just so amazing. I was definitely impressed, and as soon as I can afford it, I'll be switching too. So,
so as far as that goes, you know, you can join that movement to moving your money. Also, I mean, look into black-owned businesses in your area. You know, see what stores are owned by black people. You know, I mean, research it. If you're going to like Killer Mike said, if you're going to Wingstop, make sure it's owned by Rick Ross. He owns a couple of them around the country. You know, things like that. If you're going to Starbucks or something like that, make sure it's owned by Magic Johnson, you know.
Yeah, definitely look in your community as well for some mom and pop shops. And if you want to give back to the community, if you have a skill that you want to share, you know, put that out there. You know, mow some lawns for free in your community. Give some haircuts to the elderly black people or people of color in your community if you have some of them, you know. I mean, really support the people in your community. You know, for example, I love to cook, and I would love to cook for some of my friends locally here who I know are, you know, they're really busy and they need somebody to show them some care and love. There's that elderly man down the street with the dogs on the bus. I would love to bring him some food. He seems like he's just always up at dawn and down at dusk. You know, find something that you can do to give back to your community. Don't just expect people to do something for you, you know, like give back. Make your community represent you. Exactly.
You know, if you want your community to represent you, make sure that you help them out as well.
Yeah, we had a group chat with some local friends here, and one of them was really confused on what he wanted to do. He had really big dreams, really big ideas, but, you know, our little group definitely needs to start somewhere. So he did, you know, we did run some ideas off of him, like mowing the lawns, giving rides to people if you can afford it, you know. There were some kids down the block that were selling some freeze pops, so we told them, you know, go buy some from the kids. They were black kids. So we told them to go support the neighborhood kids. I mean, we can always do something. It doesn't have to be huge, and if it's not in your power to do something huge, it doesn't have to be. Right. The smallest difference really has such a big impact.
And also remember, I mean, you know, get the kids involved too. I mean, that's your future, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But start a bank account for your kids. You know, put a little bit in there for them every month. That way they have money when they get out on their own, you know. I mean, people need, you know, like people say, what do you have if you don't own anything, you don't have any property, then, you know, what do you really have, you know? You can't start anything if you don't own anything. So, and money is a big part of that. So,
yeah, definitely start with teaching your kids, like, for example, how to manage money, and take them to the bank with you when you open their account. You know, show them what a bank does, educate them on the grown-up world a tiny bit. You know, they're going to think it's like a fun field trip. You know, you can definitely involve the kids in almost anything you do. Get a few kids together once a month. Do a neighborhood barbecue, you know. Do a garage sale with some of the members of your community, you know, or donate clothes to a local foster home or a nursing home that you know is heavily populated with people who, you know, are in the black community or in the people of color community. You know, there's so many things that we could do for our community. And honestly, I mean, this is all stuff we should be doing anyway. So just really focus it on the black community, on the people of color.
Activism.
Yeah, I mean, try to find a way to give back and to, you know, bring everybody together in a way.
And just don't support the people that don't support you.
Yeah, definitely.
If, for example, you know, there's a Joe's restaurant down the street, and Joe's restaurant is owned by a white man, and he's on Facebook, you know, making a whole bunch of racist comments, let people know, hey, you know, Joe's restaurant down the street, he doesn't like black people down there, so don't give him your business, you know. I mean, if he wants to act like that, let him be like that. Just don't support him. He doesn't deserve that money when you could be giving it back to somebody that cares about you.
Yeah, these are all really good ideas. I'm pretty much done, I think.
I mean, looks like we covered just about everything on the notes.
Yeah. So. I just want to give a few shout outs to some friends. I moved to the South 2 years ago, and I have a few friends I don't see often, but a couple friends I definitely want to say what's up to is Myron and Tamisha. They have been so good to me. They don't even know me, really. I mean, they only know me because they're friends with my husband. But, they, thanked me for keeping my voice out there and standing up for what's right. And I definitely feel the love from them. They said they want me around if they have kids. And to teach them, and I really appreciated that more than I could possibly put into words. So
plus we'll probably have a podcast with them soon as well.
Yeah, I'd love to have them as guests on here, as people who are thinking about having children in the future and what kind of things they would like to see in the Black community when they do have children. That's something that I would love to hear. I don't know, all my friends, I love you guys, especially the ones who listen to me and don't get mad. Thanks for not getting mad at me. I truly love you guys, especially the ones who have really listened and stood up for, my white allies who are not white-splaining, who are not speaking over, who are actually being good allies and amplifying rather than speaking over. I give them credit because, quite honestly, there's just not many of them, especially with so much white feminism right now. Like, I just really do appreciate them, and I want to say, for me personally, thank you for not silencing me and listening. Thank you.
What else? Underdog Collective, great group.
Oh, I love them. Yes. I do miss them. We've been a little snoozy lately, but we're all living lives, and I respect each and every one of them, and I love them so much. Yeah, I'm feeling the love right now. I'm feeling the love.
Also, I mean, we got to shout out So Well Spoken podcast.
Oh man, if there's a podcast that you should listen to, if not us, definitely listen to So Well Spoken. I used to listen to Stuff Mom Never Told You, which is another good podcast. But I'm not going to lie to you when I say that So Well Spoken completely took over my podcast. I only listen to them and the Game of Thrones podcast that we listen to. And I'm not throwing any shade at Stuff Mom Never Told You. I do love Caroline and Kristen a lot. And I also want to give them credit for being white women who are amplifying a lot of voices. They did a really good podcast recently on the sterilization of people of color that a lot of people don't know about. But I don't know. It's not that I don't love them, but I'm just saying So Well Spoken they just do something for me.
The name speaks for itself.
They're great guys. I really love them. And
so shout out to Angelus and Morris.
And everyone else. Slate. What's his name? Is it Slavin? I don't even know. And because I only pay attention to Morris and Angelus. I'm the worst person ever. I'm sorry. They just had Mike on there. I remember his name.
Well, he's a new guy.
Yeah, but yeah, well, specifically Angelus. He's really helped us. He gave Maurice some information on how to get the podcast started, and he's just been so friendly, and I really appreciate that. And I know it kind of sounds a little fangirl, and I'm not trying to, but he's just such a great person. And if you ever have the chance to interact with any of them, but Angelus has been awesome, and I really appreciate their voices.
Yeah. And
Angelus has been really receptive to us appreciating him. We just sent him a little gift because he's great. He's cool.
And I mean, they're not just out there for the Black community or people of color, but they also include the men and the women into it.
Yeah, I definitely want to give a lot of credit to Angela specifically because I see him speak up for Black women on his Twitter a lot, and they just spoke a lot about how Black women, specifically, quote unquote, come to bat for black men. And it's just so great to see people in a community like him stand up for the women, you know, like, and I just want to throw this out there. You're not mansplaining. I don't personally think you're mansplaining. I think you're amplifying and you're standing up for women, and I love it. I love it. I can't, as a woman, I mean, I'm not a black woman, but as a woman, I appreciate a man in his community saying, respect black women. I love it. I really do. I really honestly, truly wish we had that more in the Latino community, because we don't. We have the machos and the, you know, oh man, the misogyny in Latino communities is just really overwhelming. And
we'll save that for another one, huh?
Yeah, because I could go on for another hour about that.
All right, well, thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening to me ramble about stuff. I talk a lot, which is why I wanted to do this. I mean, I have a blog, but let's be honest, I do better when I talk.
All right, well, as I said, thanks for listening.
Gracias.
My name was Maurice.
It's Allie.
And this was Parental Awesomeness.
Bye.